It's time for the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is the voice of the working class, Rick Smith.
And welcome, brothers, sisters, working class heroes. This is the Rick Smith Show. Thanks so much for being here. Today on the big program, lots to get to, lots to talk about. What an interesting primary day Tuesday was, especially in my state of Pennsylvania. Still not over yet. The Senate, the Republican side of the Senate race, still up in the air. And interesting how Republicans seem to be okay with mail-in ballots now. All of a sudden okay with it. Yeah, I was kind of waiting for Donald Trump to swoop in and say no mail-in ballots. Now, as you know, it's neck and neck between Dr. Oz, and the according to Dr. Quack, the China businessman David McCormick. They've been just over the last several months just beating each other senseless on that frame of, Dr. Quack on one side, China businessman on the other. There were about millions of dollars wasted attacking each other, and good for them. They're tearing each other apart. They're within the margin of an automatic recount at this moment, waiting on the mail-in ballots to be completely counted. And you know what's interesting? Interesting is, only a handful of the Kathy Barnett people are saying that it's being stolen from her. I was waiting for it. In fact, before the election, even started, I said, going to be interesting to see which one of them claims the election was stolen, because this is what Republicans do now in the post-Trump era. Because, I had someone remind me that everything Trump has ever done and has lost, he's always claimed that he's been cheated. And this is now the whiny kind of part of the party that every time is going to be, I didn't lose because I was a bad candidate. I didn't lose because I had the wrong message. I didn't lose because I ran a crummy campaign. No, I lost. I didn't lose. Stolen. Now, to be honest, the person who should have won this race should have been Kathy Barnett. And I'm going to say it. I know I'm going to get heat for it. Oh, do I know I'm going to get heat for this? But I am going to say it. I thought about it and I have to say it because it is true. Had she been an old white guy who looked like a thumb instead of a black woman, would have won hands down, running away. Because if you look at the gubernatorial side of things, the old bald white guy who looks like a thumb walked away with it. Benito Mastriano walked away. Doug Mastriano walked away with the gubernatorial race over the former Congressman Lou Barletta, who had been, he had been the extreme of the Republican Party. For those who don't know Pennsylvania politics, he was one of the Tea Party guys. He was the mayor of Hazleton, did a bunch of horrible stuff to immigrants. That was his claim to fame in the Republican Party. He was able to stake his flag on, hey, I'm bad to immigrants. Granted, my family's a bunch of immigrants. And this is what sprung him to the mainstream of the party. He now clearly not crazy enough. Now Benito Mastriano there, he was there on January 6th. He led a bunch of busloads full of other little fascists to Washington for that day with the express purpose of stopping the steal. Always remember, that was the point. Stopping the certification of the election. Every other excuse, line of BS that they throw out. Oh, it was a family day. Oh, it was just any other day. We were just rallying for peace and freedom. No, they were there to stop the certification of the election. Because ultimately what they wanted to do is they wanted to make sure that they didn't count the votes because they knew they lost. And they wanted the House of Representatives to end up being the deciders. In fact, Trump said it here in Pennsylvania a couple of weeks before that January 6th insurrection. They were planning this out. Mastriano was part of it, and he is now the Republican candidate for governor. He could be the governor of this state, and he already said on election night, he said, "Look, we're going to deliver those electoral votes to the Republican." And he, how most candidates who start off on the fringe, kind of move back towards the center for the election. He's not doing that. He's staying way off on the extreme because he understands. He understands where his base is. His base believes in what Trump has laid out. They wholeheartedly believe that the election was stolen from them. Granted, all of this election, no, this one's fine. Somehow Joe Biden was able to just steal his election. Not all the other ones, not this one. It's really quite remarkable. But our Senate race is interesting in that Oz isn't really what the Republican base is. Trump endorsed him, but not really the kind. I'm surprised Trump endorsed him, and I think a lot of Republican voters were as well. Considering that Trump had to come out today and say, "Hey, you should have already taken the brass ring. You should have already declared victory," and that he didn't already know that, that's pretty remarkable to me. We also find out that Dr. Oz, in his late night musings, has spent a bunch of time with Fox News' Sean Hannity. I guess they're like brothers now. And it's interesting to me, again, that Hannity seems to have his hands in a lot of places. Now, I did like Kathy Barnett's response to this, which was, Sean Hannity's had his hands in a lot of things, interfering in Pennsylvania politics. I don't think that's going to get her invited to the Fox News Christmas party, but kind of interesting. Now, on the Democratic side, what happened in this state? You had John Fetterman, who walked away with the Senate campaign, and for me, the message in that was simple: embrace working class values, embrace making the lives of working class people better, and embrace union rights, embrace health care, embrace education. He was strong on the legalization of marijuana. He was strong on prison reform. He was strong on working class values and issues. And guess what? Working class voters will respond. If you're authentic, if you're real, if you are the real deal. This isn't rocket science. No real surprise here. Again, none of the results that came out of Tuesday's primary in Pennsylvania were any real shocker. Everything kind of led us in the direction that it went. The message, especially coming out of this primary, is, and I think it's clear, that Democratic voters don't want and aren't going to stand for a Manchin-like candidate. They don't want Manchin-esque representation anymore. They don't want Democrat light. They want somebody who's going to stand firm on working class values, someone who's going to stand up, and in moments where you're going to have to mix it up and maybe brawl a little bit, maybe you're going to ball your digits up and throw a punch or two every now and again. That's the message in this. And look, you look in the western part of the state where Summer Lee is ahead in that race. Very progressive candidate, solid working class candidate, all of the odds stacked against her, huge amounts of outside corporate money coming in for the moderate, centrist Democrat, who everybody thought was just going to steamroll over her. She's actually in the lead as we speak. That speaks volumes. And I think the Democrats, they do need to wake up to the reality that you need to stand on these working class values. Because look, the Republicans, we know who they are. We know where they're going to be. They're going to ban abortion. They're going to attack public education. They're going to deregulate guns. They're going to be in bed with corporate America, even though they are trying a pivot to saying, oh, we care about workers. Oh, we do, while simultaneously saying that we're going to make Pennsylvania a no rights at work state. Because understand and listen up, my union brothers and sisters. If you're in Pennsylvania and you're even thinking about voting for Doug Mastriano, the Republicans in this state will pass a right-to-work law so fast it'll make Kentucky's head spin. And Kentucky had a special session early so that they could do it. It was like 9 a.m. when they got up to do it on a Saturday. If Mastriano is governor, they'll do it faster than that. And this is that kind of, it's about the issues. And I'm hoping, and look, I like Josh Shapiro, the Democrat who is the Democratic nominee. I like him. I think he has a lot of broad base appeal. For me, one of the things that he did, he went after one of the biggest construction companies in this state and even in the country, and went after them for wage theft and employee misclassification. This is a guy he's got some bones when it comes to standing up for working people. That's who I want fighting for working people, not someone who went to our Capitol to overthrow our government. Not a bully, not someone like that. And this is going to be an interesting moment because there is a clear choice. And I think over the next couple of weeks, as Democrats in Washington begin laying out their committee findings on what happened on January 6th, I'm hoping people are paying attention because, well, the lure of Stop the Steal is still in the GOP's mind, not just here in Pennsylvania, but in places like North Carolina as well. The outrage machine has polluted the minds of Republican voters. And look, I listen to some right-wing radio. I'm amazed that people can tolerate it because it is chocked full of nonsense. I listened to two old white people today talk about critical race theory and how it angers white people to hear about history, to hear about the things that happened in the past. I'm literally dumbfounded when I hear these kind of things, but yet it's what passes off. Which is why elections matter. Elections have consequences, and why everybody should be registered to vote and get out come November. Because if you're in Pennsylvania, this is a big one. Because, and I don't say this lightly, this could be your last election. Someone like Benito Mastriano, he's already told you he's going to put his thumb on the scale. Scary stuff. Love to hear your thoughts. 1-866-416-RICK. 1-866-416-7425. Quick break. Right back after this.
From the steel mills of Pennsylvania to the auto factories of Michigan to the modern makers movement, manufacturing makes our nation great. I'm Scott Paul, president of the Alliance for American Manufacturing. We bring business and labor together to advocate for policies that everyone can agree on. Together, we can strengthen manufacturing and create good-paying American jobs. Help us keep it made in America.
Calling all builders, all welders and roofers, engineers and electricians, calling all brick masons and boiler makers, steel workers and steam fitters. Your country is calling you to rebuild America, to create a cleaner, safer, more prosperous future for all. Tackling climate change, this is the job of our lifetime. It's time to build back better. Let's get to work.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So Rick Scott talking about baby formula. Oh, he's indignant. He's angry. Angry he is. Says this is just an American problem. That's it, just an American problem. He's got pictures from all over the world of baby formula on shelves. He has them. There's baby formula on shelves in Panama. They've got baby formula on shelves in Canada. They've got baby formula in Israel. They've got baby formula in Brazil. All over the world, they've got baby formula. And there's plenty of it. And you go, yeah, there is. Do you have any clue of why we don't have it here? And I'm sure he does. This is just the latest outrage for people like Rick Scott to rile up the base and point it at Joe Biden did this. And the reality is, no, Joe Biden didn't. And what liberals have grabbed onto is Donald Trump, with his changes to NAFTA, put a 17% tariff on Canadian baby formula, and that is true. He did. And that is a problem. I think a small one for me. The bigger one is there are 4 companies that control over 90% of the baby formula in this country. One of them being the largest one, Abbott, who has like the largest share of that, had a production facility problem that was contaminated, that actually killed 2 kids, and they had to recall a bunch of it. For me, consolidation is the much bigger problem here. The fact that 4 companies have that kind of control over the market, that's the bigger problem. Breaking these behemoths up, that's the answer. Having more production domestically, that's the answer. But we're going to focus on the easy stuff. It's Trump's fault for the tariffs. And look, as I've said before, I'm a supporter of domestic production for domestic consumption. In this moment, we should be bringing in what we can in this emergency. But the message here for me simply is time to break these big conglomerates up, and much more local production, much more competitive production. Just my thoughts. Let's go to the phone lines. Got Kurt on line 1. Kurt, how are we doing tonight?
Hey, good, Rick. How about yourself?
Can't complain. What's on your mind?
So I want to talk a little bit about Western Pennsylvania and the Summer Lee race. The group Starfish, we phone bank for Summer Lee here we've been in there for about 2 weeks now. And the last week of this race, I forget what day we started, but one of the organizers kind of broke down some of the precincts in that District 12. Are you familiar with Murraysville?
Yep.
So Murraysville is part of that district, and it's I think it's predominantly made up of a lot of the retired union working class.
Steel workers.
Exactly. And one of the organizers broke down all the precincts in there, and there was on Monday, last Monday, there was, according to the turf and to the list, there were 6,000 votes that hadn't voted yet. And a lot of those people were holding out till Election Day. And when we started phone banking in there, that whole community really didn't like the whole idea of the big money being thrown in there. And it's probably not like, you can't just say that Summer Lee's going to win because of Murraysville, but I think it made a big help for her, because I think most of those people, when I talked to them, they were pretty much like a moderate type Democrat, but they were not impressed with this. They're tired of this kind of stuff. And so it's kind of interesting how that that could have been the change for Summer Lee, because going into on Monday when we were looking at all this, she was down, and it was right about the time all the money was breaking. And so I think it says a lot about, like what you were saying with the mansion types and throwing all this money in. I think people are starting to really, they're fed up with it. And, they want to get back to helping the working class.
Yeah, and I would argue that, some of the people that I talked to out that way as well, they believed her more on the things that are going to help their family get ahead and make life better. The working class issues, they were more on her side than the other. And because they believed she was more authentic. And that's the message I kept getting back. So this is where I've taken this position, that if you're authentic and you're believable and if you walk the walk and talk the talk, I think you're gonna do better.
Right. Yeah. And it really said a lot about this, this campaign, and it was really being from that. As a kid, I grew up in Ohio, and my grandparents lived in Western Pennsylvania, and it kind of took me back to some of that time as a kid in those conversations from those people that, I generally don't hear out west, because we're in Tucson, we're not really a union, we're not union led. And so it's nice to hear those conversations. And I think I talked to like 200 people in that town, voters in that town, that would talk about the Blue Dog Democrats. And I haven't heard Blue Dog Democrat in a very long time. And, and that's the way I remember as a kid, that's kind of how the Democrats refer to themselves. They didn't do all this left and right and moderate and, progressive. That's how they referred to themselves.
Yeah. And the Blue Dogs are all gone, but so are the more moderate Republicans as well. You're right, Kurt. I appreciate the call, man, and keep up the great work. We got a lot of work to do.
Oh, it's enormous. All right.
Good stuff, brother. Appreciate it. The reality is on those issues that are important, and this is where, as I've been saying for the longest time, on those working class issues that I think we all can agree on, this is where candidates should be focusing, spending the mass of their time. How are you going to make the lives of working class people better? How are we going to make families better? How are we going to make health security better, retirement security better, safer jobs, better wage jobs, better opportunities, better futures? That's where we need to be. And all the other stuff, I think, will work itself out. I think all of those other issues will come around. I think that's a huge part of this. And I think that's part of why Fetterman won by such a huge margin. I think he was much more believable, as well as, I think Pennsylvania is a more progressive state than people give credit for. I'd love to hear your thoughts, though. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com, if you've got a question, comment, something on your mind. Also, if you miss any of the program, make sure you download the podcast. Always there, always available. I'm going to take a quick break right here. When we come back, I'm going to talk more about the Mastriano, Benito Mastriano, and what could possibly happen in Pennsylvania if they get a crazy governor. Look, this is important across every state in this country. You get somebody who's off the deep end, bad things happen, and not just in one state. Quick break, right back.
I've been driving buses for 5 years, and my day-to-day routine is I wake up a little earlier than most people. I get on a bus, I go out, I pick up some students and make sure they get to school nice and safe. Here in Fairbanks, Alaska, that can be a challenge because of the winter weather and the icy roads. But I love the job. So the Teamsters are great. They provide us a lot of protections. They've always taken care of their people, made sure that our jobs were secure. We didn't have to worry about whether or not we'd have a job from day to day.
And that's amazing, because before we'd be working 4, 6, 8 hours a day and only earning minimum wage. Was real difficult to make a living. And the Teamsters pushed a lot so we make something we can live off of and not have to have a second job. What absolutely gives me peace of mind, the union membership allows me to focus on this job without having to worry about whether or not my family is going to be taken care of. I'm Andrew Case, and I'm proud to be Teamsters Local 959.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So one of the big stories coming out of Tuesday's primary is Madison Cawthorn lost. Big win for Tom Tillis. And, you look at this and you go, all the crazy stuff he did, all of the nonsense, all of the childish rhetoric, it wasn't until he started talking about cocaine and orgies that he got thrown under the bus. There's some things that they will tolerate, some things they will not. Now I gotta wonder what Madison's gonna do now. I worry. I gotta tell you, I am really truly worried about him. This is someone who is devolving right before our very eyes. I hope someone does an intervention and puts him on the straight and narrow. Now, Georgia's got a primary coming up. Got rid of one lunatic, hopefully. Cawthorn's going to be gone. Wouldn't it be great if Marjorie three names went down? And we got somebody who, represented people. That's why I've asked my good friend Fred Wellman to come share some thoughts. He's the co-founder of the Beer Hall Project, one of our favorite guests here on the program. Fred, thanks for taking time for us.
It's great to be here, and I won't cuss.
Now, my editor would be very, very, very happy. So let's get your thoughts.
She's hovering over the beeper button right now. I know.
Cawthorn, this is a big deal?
I think it's terrific. I've had a special place in my heart, the darkest, most awful part of my heart for Madison Cawthorn. My son and I were talking this morning. He was with me on Election Day when we were out in Utah at the Lincoln Project. When I saw live when Madison Cawthorn tweeted out his "Cry More Lib" tweet as his very first statement as a congressman-elect. So I've had a very special, deep, dark hatred for the young man ever since. And I don't forgive him for being a youth. I mean, he's the same age as my son, who's was a veteran by then. I've got kids that are his age, and they're not doing stupid stuff that he's done. I've never accepted his excuses, except that he's just not a good person. So I wish him the very best. Actually, I don't. I really just don't care. Again, somebody said to me the other day that the thing is, what he got in trouble for, the videos and stuff, was his private behavior. It became public. I said, no, that'd be something. This is a man who lied about getting a naval academy. This is a man who regularly embarrassed his constituents and never once apologized. Look, everybody makes mistakes, but this is a young man who's never found an ounce of remorse. So I have very little sympathy for his plight. I believe that he has painted himself in his corner. Now, what we got a MAGA guy instead who just promised not to be as embarrassing as Madison Cawthorn. So we've traded one for another. But in the end, I think Madison, it wasn't just the orgy cocaine stuff. I mean, they were very angry in North Carolina. He switched districts, allowing someone else to run his district, then decided to change his mind, just come back and say, hey, thanks. He didn't coordinate the party or anyone in the state when he made these decisions. He's always been out for himself and himself only. He lives in a special world of where he's the special person. So he built a lot of enemies, and this goes to show. Now, what does it mean for the larger picture? Obviously, Margie Taylor Greene's situation is not the same. She does have a primary next week, Tuesday, here in Georgia. I'm actually talking to you from Georgia. Her opponents in that, there's many. That's a challenge. There's something like 5. They have not had the kind of hits on her that Madison Cawthorn did. There hasn't been a big outside campaign against Margie Taylor Greene, unfortunately, for the primary. The party, for all their talk about not tolerating behavior, has been more than happy to tolerate her attendance at neo-Nazi rallies, etc. So I don't believe she's in any danger of losing at the primary ballot, unfortunately. But I do believe that she is in a competitive district now for the general. I do believe that obviously my friend Marcus Flowers I believe Marcus will win the primary next week, and I believe that he can mount a campaign that gives her a challenge.
And the hope is because there was part of me that hoped that Cawthorn would make it through the primary, so that would be a little more vulnerable come November, because these are seats that need to be picked up if Democrats are going to hold on to the House, to where these way out, crazy, just off the map Republicans, of which now in Pennsylvania we've got one running for governor.
Right.
It might be a little bit more, might be a little easier to take out.
Well, that's the hope. I mean, I also remember saying that about Trump. So I'm not one of those guys who's a big fan of oh, the worst person is the right guy for the job, because we've already learned that the Republican Party is more than happy to embrace the worst people. Hence, Marjorie Taylor Greene. So I don't believe necessarily. Now, Doug Mastriano is a unique case. He's a retired colonel from the Army. I find him a reprehensible person with none of the character and none of the values that I served with. He was at January 6th. He's very, very anti-abortion. He's literally said flat out, as I mentioned earlier, I talked to Greg Sargent today from the Washington Post. He said flat out that if he doesn't feel like the next election wasn't without fraud, then he would not certify it. He's literally made it very clear that if a Democrat wins that state, there's every reason to believe he will not certify the election. So he's a very disturbing anti-democratic guy. He's a willing autocrat. He would run that state much like DeSantis of Florida. So he's an especially execrable person. But Josh Shapiro is a great candidate. I think Josh has a very good chance of beating him. Pennsylvania is a purple state, truly. And if he runs a good, solid campaign, which we've seen so far, Josh Shapiro has. And I look at that a lot, too. I think you and I have talked about this before, Rick, is, it's you have to look at the actual campaign. It's not just the Ballotpedia number. If I have one more person throw that at me, or the 538 or whatever it may be, that's a plus 40, don't even waste your time. People aren't numbers. Historic trends aren't the truth, right? So I do believe that people change, and a good, solid campaign that brings people out can do that. So anyway, I remain an optimist. I do, though, believe there's an opportunity for us to shape the narrative for the midterm around these very, very extremist Republicans who are openly saying they have no intention of honoring our democracy, openly saying that they would be more than happy to install Trump as almost a dictator. I think if the Democrats can effectively message nationally and mobilize their base, then we have a very good chance of turning the tide of this ridiculous, the party that takes the presidency always loses the midterm. Like, well, you know what? Let's not do that. Let's not assume that anymore.
Yeah, let's not do that. That's a good idea. Let's not do that. So what is that message? I mean, because, you look at, Formula Gate, the Republicans are trying to make hay off of this. They're hammering on inflation. They're setting the
diversion.
Yeah, I mean, they're trying to set the messaging. What is the Democratic messaging going into November?
They need to be on the aggressive. They need to attack. The reason John Fetterman won is because he attacked. Connor Lamb's a decent person. I he's a veteran like me, but in the end, the Democrats are trying to elect people. Thankfully, our voters are electing people who will attack. John Fetterman's not going to take any BS, right? So I do believe the Democratic National Party and the leadership in Washington, which I am nervous about, they are octogenarians, need to understand that there's an electorate that's angry, that wants to fight. So they need to go on the offensive. I'm very proud of Ms. Psaki before she left. She had that thing the other day where they tried to, one of the mainstream reporters tried to go after, like, well, the president's saying that, Republicans want to raise taxes. Really, it's just Rick Scott's plan. She goes, oh, really? Rick Scott's plan? She opens her book and reads, 15 Republicans, who include Ronna McDaniel and others, who've endorsed his plan to raise taxes on most Americans. Guess what happened? Fox News spent the rest of the day defending that. Oh, no, well, Rick Scott's, loner. We need to do that. We need to be prepared to go aggressive. Look, the baby food thing is such a freaking ridiculous diversion. This is a capitalist country. It's not the government. The government doesn't produce baby formula. The government doesn't distribute baby formula. And we can't keep falling into these traps that the Republicans lay so effectively. That whole thing started because Marjorie Taylor Greene was one of the first ones. She said, we should be giving $40 billion in aid to Ukraine because we can't take care of our own people. Like, there's a baby food shortage. What could that $40 billion do here in America for baby food shortage? Well, this isn't a communist country, right? So the next thing you know, excuse me, I apologize for sneezing. The next thing you know, you've got everybody saying it. And oh my gosh, now it's the talking point. We spend so much time chasing our tail with these ridiculous sidebar diversions instead of being aggressive and holding them accountable. I want to know, like, for example, I've been telling a number of my candidates, we talk about Buffalo. Buffalo, and I've actually had some people say to me, I've talked to other campaigns, like, well, Fred, we're trying to avoid the gun issue. Okay, for goodness sake. Buffalo, the guns is an issue. This is racism. That young man went to that town 200 miles away with the intent to kill black people. This is an issue of great replacement theory being standardized, being sanitized, and being distributed and available to young, angry men. And that's being done by the the GOP. That's being done by Republicans. Lee Stefanik, a New York congressman, ran ads this fall about replacement theory. They couch it in code words like, oh, they're going to try and add more people to the voter rolls. No, it's the same theory. So we need to be very aggressive. I've counseled my candidates, go after these guys, make the Republicans answer for these things. You know, the GOP needs to say, I guess Jim Jordan may have gone on the floor tonight and said, oh, of course we're against white nationalism. Really? Because seems to be a major talking point. Right? So I think if we're aggressive in our message, if we go after them, we tell our story effectively, we tell our story of what we've done. The Biden administration's messaging system is deeply broken. I'm sorry to say that. I have great respect for the president, what they're doing, but they continue to fail to message. There's a great article today in the Post about this disinformation board and how it went horribly awry. How did they not see that coming? I mean, how do you issue something named the disinformation whatever board and are shocked that there's blowback? I mean, it took an hour and a half for Jack Posobiec to shape that message.
Yep.
And they never recovered. And now they've dissolved the whole damn thing. And I got to tell you, I was just banging my head on my desk today saying, my God, how'd you not see that coming? How did you not respond at a time? It took them, they never did actually get together any kind of effective talking points and distribute those talking points to their surrogates, which they've never recruited any surrogates. Look, the Republicans are masters at it. They get their talking points every single day. Everybody on Fox News and OAN and Newsmax is on point. And the Democrats continue to flail about making it up as they go. So I'm extremely frustrated with the failure to effectively communicate to the American people from this administration beyond the 1991 style of sending a spokesman to the podium. And so that's how they win. They build an actual messaging operation that takes the fight to the Republicans, and they do it fast. And I remain ever the optimist. We'll see.
Yeah, what's that Will Rogers quote? You know, I'm not a member of an organized party. I'm a Democrat. Right to your point.
There you go. And here we are in 2022, and it was cute back in 1945, but now it's 2022, and we live in an information environment of immediate impact. Social media, cable news, everything else. We cannot continue to govern like it's 30 years ago. We need to modernize. We need to coordinate our messages, and we need to be aggressive in doing that. The Republicans have got it down. They got it down to a science. The baby formula thing went from one little quip to their main talking point within a week. And guess what? Now the president's out. Oh my God, the Defense Production Act for baby formula. My God, they're running circles around us. Communications wise. And now we're not talking about abortion. We're not talking about Buffalo. Right? Once again, they diverted our attention. They divided. I mean, the division was brilliant. The day they decided to come up with the talking point where we're giving formula to illegal immigrants instead of Americans, where they literally suggest their talking point was starve babies who are in our custody, and we let them off. And the Democrats didn't go after that for more than a couple hours. My God, we literally had political figures saying we should starve babies 5 days after they voted against abortion, or 3 days. It's like, okay, so we don't want a baby fetuses to die, but babies in custody of our government custody, they should just starve to death. It's just, and once again, that opportunity went voted away.
It is crazy when you stop and you think about it.
It is
the way that they're coordinated, the way that they're all on the same page, the same message, right. And Democrats haven't been able to figure this out. I mean, it's incredible to me.
It's incredible because you know what? It's not that freaking hard. I mean, honestly, I was in the Army in 2000. When was I in Iraq the first time? As a public affairs officer, 2005. And every day we issued our key talking points. When I went to Army headquarters in 2007, after I graduated grad school, I ran the Army's internal news network, Soldiers Magazine, Army News Service, Soldiers TV. I ran all that. And we would go to meetings at the Pentagon, and each day, the Secretary of the Army, each week, the Secretary of the Army and the Chief of Staff of the Army would give us their 10 priorities. These are our 10 priorities, be it women in the military or tech. That was a big one for a while back in the late 2000s, was the Army is a high-tech force. I don't know. We had to convince people that nerds were welcome. And you know what I'd do? I would come back, and I'd stick that in the column right in the middle of my newsroom. And my reporters would come to me. They say, sir, I want to do a story. I said, okay, look at the list. And they'd go to the list. I said, is it on there? And they'd say, no. Okay, then don't do it. Okay. Well, here's an angle, sir. Like, great. I mean, here's a perfect example. Miss America, 2008. This is a true story. 2008, 7, doesn't matter. 2007. One of the Miss America finalists was a soldier, Utah National Guard. And she was a combat veteran in Afghanistan. and she was a soldier, and then she was going to nursing school where she was getting a full ride from the Army to go to nursing school. Now that's a story. Okay, so I've got a young lady who's also Miss America, but she also happens to be one of our prime recruiting targets, which is healthcare workers at the time. And the fact that she was getting a free ride scholarship from the United States Army. That's what that story turned into. Women can be whatever they want to be in the United States Army, to include a beauty queen. And we made the front cover at Fox News ran stories about it. So again.
So you should be the one running their messaging. How do we get you to do that? This is what we need to be doing more of.
I kind of do it for a living, but I'm not terribly welcome.
Well, it's what we need to be doing. But Fred, I appreciate the time. You're absolutely right. We got to get them pushing in the right direction, rowing in the same direction at least. But keep up the
in the same boat.
Yeah.
I'd like to see him in the same boat, for goodness sake, Rick.
Exactly. But keep up the great work. I look forward to having you back again real soon, man. Thanks so much.
Always a pleasure. Talk to you soon.
Our good friend Fred Wellman. Make sure you check out the work that he's doing over at the Beer Hall Project, beerhallproject.com. Quick break, right back after this. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. For working people, come to talk.
Inflation is tough on everyone. Raising kids or running a small business can feel like an uphill battle when facing down rising costs. And for retired Americans who depend on Medicare or Social Security, it can feel especially discouraging. Enter the Republican Party's plan to rescue America. Ask yourself, what's the most important priority for those struggling? That's right, paying their fair share.
Quote, all Americans should pay some income tax to have skin in the game.
No longer will households making under $50,000 watch helplessly as Wall Street suffers.
So that would raise taxes on half of Americans.
This bold new plan will ensure that even the poorest Americans can help protect our most valuable hedge fund managers and billionaires. And senior citizens who missed their chance to sacrifice themselves during the pandemic, don't worry. The Republican plan to rescue America ensures that you can turn those golden years into a golden opportunity for America's frightened billionaires.
They sunset programs like Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security.
Well, John, that's, of course, the Democrat talking points. It's a
No, it's in the plan.
So, for poor families, struggling small businesses, and senior citizens who are dying to have some skin in the game, take heart.
It's not a Democratic talking point. It's in the plan.
The Republican plan to rescue America will skin you alive.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
I like Fred a lot, and he's right. He's right on the messaging. Democrats got to be a lot more forceful and push back, and hold their feet to the fire. Look, be a little more vicious. Just my thoughts. Let's go to the phone lines. Got Sarah listening on WCPT AM 820 in Chicago. Sarah, thanks for taking time for us. What's on your mind?
I've overcome my shyness to speak to you directly, but because of the baby formula situation.
Yep.
Here's the thing. I'm the surviving offspring of a rural country doctor in southern Illinois, and the thing of so many women clamoring for this baby formula. Now, I never was a mother, but I see powdered stuff in the baby supplies department in the supermarket, so I assume that it's something you can buy over the counter. And it just occurred to me that maybe so many women are using it for their babies because it's something that a midwife could recommend, and nobody would have to write a prescription. And a lot of women can't afford doctors or medical care, prenatal, postnatal, and or delivery. And so that's why there's so many of them on the formula. I myself was a bottle-fed baby. My father was very demanding, and my mother wore 7 hats, and so she couldn't relax enough to nurse us. And so I was bottle-fed, and I survived babyhood. I just suspect that I haven't heard anybody mention the medical expenses factor, and I can't help but wonder if that isn't a real fact, not just the supply issue.
Yeah. No, that's an excellent point. But our supply problem comes from this one big factory having this contamination issue. That's a big part of it. And I would argue.
Well, I think there's a possibility that you mentioned that your former speaker mentioned how the Republicans have a way of managing speaking issues, and I think that they could be pushing that Biden can't solve the supply issue, and so that's the real problem. But they're skirting something they never want to talk about, and they push back on medicine for everybody. You mentioned in your Gray Panthers note they were the first health care for all, and the Republicans don't want to talk about that. So I can't help wondering if that isn't really the factor.
I'm sure it's part of it. Absolutely. I appreciate the call and the thoughts. Absolutely something to think about. Thank you. And
bye-bye.
Please call again. Thanks, Sarah. No, I mean it's one of those points, and again, I keep coming back to this. The fact that how is it that we're in this position? And Fred's right. It's amazing how these things always seem to pop up. It's amazing how these crises, seem to always just, take our focus away from other things. Like there's always going to be, an issue at the border with a caravan. There's always going to be, some group. Whatever happened to MS-13? We don't hear much about them anymore, do we? Republicans are great at creating boogeymen and creating diversions to keep our attention away because, he's spot on. We aren't talking about the abortion issue as much. We aren't talking about the shooting because they control the narrative of our media structure. All the while, and I've been saying this for years, all the while playing the victim that the mainstream media is out to get them, the liberal media. When they dominate talk radio. There was a study done a number of years ago that said, in the talk radio circle, where I'm at, talk radio is 90% conservative. So crazy right-wing blather, 90% of what you hear on the radio, crazy right-wing blather. The fact that Rush Limbaugh could be on 1,200 stations. And yet there are, maybe 40 across the country that someone who does a show like mine can get on, because that's all that exists. That's a problem with a media structure. That is a problem with where we are as a country. And we had better do something, and quickly. And until we do, I'm not quite sure where we end up with all of this. So as I look at this, the reality is better get better quickly on the messaging, and all of that. Because look, you look at what they've done with the fuel prices. They're pointing out, it's all Joe Biden's fault. When you look at the 28 largest oil and gas companies, the first quarter of this year, they've had a combined profit of almost $100 billion just in the first 3 months of this year. Almost $100 billion. All of last year, all of 2021, they had $184 billion. $184 billion. I mean, it's insane. BP, Shell, Chevron, Exxon, in 30 years from 1990 to 2020, almost $2 trillion they've put into their pockets. It's crazy. It's insane where we're at. And yet it's Biden's fault. When these people are lining their pockets with an obscene amount of profit. And yet they still dangle it. It's Joe Biden's fault. It's all Joe Biden's fault. And we buy it because it's all we're hearing. It's our job. It's incumbent on us to push back. It's incumbent on us to stand up and say, you know what? We're not taking it anymore. We're not putting up with it. At least that's my thought. Love to hear yours. If you miss any of the show, make sure you grab the podcast wherever you get your podcasts, from iTunes to iHeart, Stitcher to Podbean, everywhere in between. Also, email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Quick break, right back.
We've been farming the same farm for 3 generations, and it's just always been where I've wanted to be. Any farmer you talk to in Montana will tell you that the climate is definitely changing. The weather is way more extreme. We went from the wettest year we've ever had to this year with the worst drought we've had since the 80s. We've done everything we can to keep water going, but it got close to running out. Farmers can't afford the cost of climate change. Congress has to get this done.
Welcome back to The Rick Smith Show. Check out our website, thericksmithshow.com. If you miss any of today's program or any of our programs, you can get the podcast right there at the website or wherever you get your podcasts. Also, email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. On this gun issue, and like I said, I've been in both worlds. I've been in areas where you see somebody with a gun, duck. And look, I've seen people shot. It ain't pretty. It's not like it is in the movies. I've watched someone die. Ain't pretty. Not like it is in the movies. And like I said, I live in a neighborhood where, there is a gun range, within earshot of where we live, and you hear them, out there. The culture where I live now is, generations passed down guns from one to the next. This is grandpa's rifle. And look, that is part of who we are as a country. I don't want to take that away. But, the reality is, especially as we can't figure out how to get along or respect each other's opinions or any of that, the fact that so many people have guns and this idea that it's all about the self. Understand, we had guns, generations ago. They were everywhere. And yeah, there was gun violence. But this kind of, this manifesto stuff, this is a late 20th century, early 21st century thing. This is a media thing where people want to see their names. And I'm happy that a lot of media outlets aren't publishing people's names, aren't publishing their manifestos, aren't giving the attention. I refuse to say any of their names. They are the murderers. I will not say their names. I will not go into any of that. Get your notoriety somewhere else. I do find it interesting, however, that they do seem to fall into a certain kind of political ideology, and that they seem to have a certain line of thought that, look, it is what it is. The Republicans have been feeding their base for years. And as I've said, do I know that the talking heads on the right believe what they're spewing? No, I don't know that. I think they know that it's profitable. I think they believe that and they know they're making money off of it. And so what if a couple of the dim, go off on the deep end? We're in dangerous times, and this is where statesmen, leaders, have to step forward. And I love John Kennedy's analogy. We should be treating it, like a drunk driving issue. We got idiots. Idiots are ruining it for the law-abiding people. Law-abiding gun owners should be going, yeah, we want the idiots dealt with. Yeah, we should be better gun owners. We should be demanding accountability. See, we used to be that country. The Republican Party used to be that country. They used to be that party in this country. That they used to, in their platform, personal responsibility was part of it. Yeah, you can't seem to get them to be responsible for anything. It's always somebody else to blame. Always. And that's what's frustrating about the moment that we're in history, and why we need to be really forcing the Democrats to be pushing this. Now, politically, is this going to hurt them in November? I gotta think, if you make the right case, we're not coming for law-abiding gun owners' guns. We're coming after the idiots. We're coming after the people who misuse this stuff. We're coming after the people who are irresponsible. For me, that's the idea forward. Love to hear yours. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. If you miss any of the program, download the podcast wherever you get your favorite podcasts. We are there. Thanks so much for being here. We'll see you back here next time.
You've been listening to The Rick Smith Show. Email Rick at rick@thericksmithshow.com. Until next time, this has been The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.